a few seconds. All right, we are recording. Welcome to the 5th DeFiChain Labs Engineering Sync. This is a public call where we give a little bit of updates on what's going on the engineering side. And in the end of the call, we also give the opportunity for the community to engage directly with our devs if you have a question and so on. So with that, Prasanna, you have the floor.
All right. Thanks, Fabio. Happy Monday, everyone. All right. So today, I think there's quite a lot of, we are getting closer to the next hard fork. So there's quite a lot of stuff to cover. I'll just go ahead and start with that. All right. So first, super high level, what is going to be there in the next September hard fork? The hard fork is aimed at somewhere mid-September. We'll finalize the date once all of the stuff is actually in there. But definite stuff that's going in there, revamped, calculate owner rewards. It's been there for a while, but we've identified some bugs. So there's some bug fixes in progress. Peter should be wrapping it up this week. And then faster block time, that's been there for a while. You're not going to immediately activate it, but very slowly we're going to start making the chain a little bit faster once the infrastructure is able to handle it, then a little bit more. So that'll be the process for that. That's also on testing. And then there are a couple of things that's in progress. I'll show through the PRs on that, but essentially updating token addresses of DATs. Today, it's not possible. Once a DAT is there, it's pretty much set, but you can't transfer ownership of your DAT to someone else. That is now, it's a part of one large PR that's waiting to be merged. So the implementation is mostly there, but it's still, because that PR is not merged yet, I've marked it as in progress. Then token deprecation. Deprecation, we're not actually going to be doing much on the native side. All it's going to do is basically mark a token as deprecated, which is going to be prefixed by something before. Right now, it's EOL, marking end of life. So this is the primary goal, is that foundation or governance can do the marking and can basically set any token as deprecated. And once it is, from a user point of view, there's no confusion. So let's say some token XCHF. So there's no longer used. You can just mark it as deprecated, and then so people will know that that token is not being used. Beyond that, we're not planning to add anything complicated in the protocol. It's mostly just for that communication. Then restructuring a foundation. I'll cover that in a little bit. Community governance as well. And then the next one that's already been completed, which is there, is rejecting past time blocks. So this should help the EVM layer, where today you get a series of blocks, and then some blocks will actually be, in terms of time relativity, it might be before one another. So all that will no longer become possible after that. And then on a sprint, which is the D token restart, it's coming along nicely. Kugi was the primary author for it. Peter has been helping through that, and it's making incredible progress. We think we'll be able to fit that in, but it's still something, just on the cards. Once all of these are there by, in 2 weeks' time, we'll have a little bit more clarity on when do we set the hard fork. Ideally, we'd like to, even if we have to push it by a little bit in September, we'd push it and then get D token restart as well in. Right. Okay, so these are the high level. And there's going to be 2 smaller updates, one this week and another one maybe this week or next week. What they're going to do is enable level DB snapshots by default. This is already there. It's a part of master as well. This is one of the things that helps in terms of performance massively, but we haven't enabled it as default, so everybody can benefit from it. That'll be there. And then the next one is mining strategy optimizations, so which essentially will help people who are running multiple masternodes. Now the masternodes are going to be far more efficient. You can just give it a set of keys, and it's automatically going to figure out which makes sense to run, which doesn't make sense to run, and then move on. So once both of them are almost done. So once we set both of them, we'll do one release. This is the release that's likely this week. It's pending on the mining strategy at the moment. And then there's going to be one more release before the next hard fork, which is primarily going to be focused on Ocean. Coming to Ocean, so just the whole bunch of PRs that's open. Maybe we can just look at the Ocean ones. So the Ocean, long story short, it's not merged into master yet, but it's on a separate branch. And now it's fully functional. The team already has DeFi Scan that's running on Ocean. Everything works as expected. There are a few smaller things here and there that's being worked on. But beyond that, the primary thing that the team is working on this week to iron out is going to be performance regressions. So there are a few regressions that we noticed after getting everything up and live. So it's on the lines of 5 to 10 millisecond per block. The team is still looking into that. And once we've resolved that, then we can actually merge Ocean into master. If you're already testing it, right now it's at a great point to test. It's basically, you can just go look at this branch, the Ocean branch, and then Ocean API branch, Ocean setup branch, and then you can run it from there. So that's the Ocean part. Then we'll just have a look at outside of Ocean, what are the things that's there. So one is protocol stuff. There's been other stuff that's already been merged, which I covered, but parameterized block time is still waiting to be merged. Then token restart, that's the large chunk. And then restructure of foundation and governance. I'll touch on this a little bit. What this is doing is, the overall motivation is the idea was to slowly decentralize more and more pods of relating to foundation. So early design was to, okay, let's get things up running fast. And so there was a whole bunch of things that were pseudo-centralized, and it's slowly, the idea was to move towards decentralization. And this is probably one of the final pieces of that implementation. What it's going to do is it's removing in certain places where foundation had certain superpowers. Again, these were all part of the early days, which was something that was probably never used throughout the lifetime of the chain. But now we want to start adding community governance and add community governance keys. So communities can form special interest groups, which can use those keys to be able to set tax fees and things like that that are being set right now. There's currently a huge monolithic reliance on core teams. So even if there are other teams that work on this, but then it has to come back to the core team. So after this, it'll become much easier for different teams to work independently. That's the goal. But in order for us to do that, we also have to remove certain foundational aspects where there are additional superpowers that was there early on. So this restructure is going to primarily take care of that. Some of the key goals, the PR describes all of the specific details, but long story short, there are a couple of places where you can actually, foundation has the rights to mint any DID token. All that's going to be removed now, and then you cannot. Today, foundation can update any DAT token. Let's say if there's a token is owned by somebody else, foundation has the power to change that name symbol in a way that we don't want there to be any power to misrepresent anybody else. So we're going to be removing that as well. And then token deprecation, which we just talked about. So foundation will be able to do that. So these are some of the removal of those superpowers. And then what's going to happen is there's an alternate set, which is similar to governance, similar to the current foundation, which is going to be called the community governance, and which is going to be exact copy of foundation, the way it works. The reason we're doing that is we still want to ensure that we have not really missed any pieces in foundation, because we don't want to find out that there's something else that was missed later on, because we are now we want to get the community governance out as soon as possible. The safest way to do it is to, in parallel, use some similar parts of the code, but create this as a new section itself so it can be bounded quite well. And then overall, the goal is to slowly eliminate that foundation entirely. So that's basically what the context of this is around. You can look into the more detailed aspects of things. The token update is also going to be a part of this PR. That is the one that is pending. And once that is done, then we can start merging this and then start testing this. So that's the restructured part of it. And then, minor strategy that's waiting on it. And I don't think there's anything else that needs specific call out here. So that should be the large context in terms of the current updates that's there. And in terms of, token restart, you can see there's a lot of active work that's going on. So since start, there's been, tons of updates that's been going on. So we think it's almost there, but it's still quite a lot of, pieces to be worked around. Once that's done, hopefully we can actually get this in as well. So that should be the long story updates. Today Peter and Jeremy's not there on call, but I've covered in for them. Let's take some questions, and then maybe we can go into some other aspects that we need to discuss.
Yes. Okay, we have, I think, 2 questions from Bernd here in chat. So question 1, outage oracles some days ago. Can someone implement multiple ocean connections that birthday research ocean down does not bring down oracles?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Okay, first, a little bit of context on oracles is I think there's also community members working on what a possible oracle special interest group could be. So that's one that would actually help. But now jumping back to the current Ocean part, so today Ocean is very expensive to run in many aspects, especially when you get rammed in by all the requests when you're running it publicly. However, the current PR sets that are still awaiting, which is merging of the Ocean into the node, that basically eliminates the need to have central Ocean as it is today. But that does not mean that there's not going to be ocean.defichain.com. Someone will still have to run it. So it would actually be great if the question was from Mark, but if there's anybody among the community, if you want to run parts of it, that would actually be amazing. We'd be open to that. And we could actually use, when Ocean part is merged into the node, then you can actually just run node and then point that to Ocean itself. And on this regard, let me also show, so there is the infra project, which already has Ocean. We've been open sourcing more and more parts of the infrastructure that's there. So you will be able to see so everything is under legacy, which are the older parts of it. So you can see all of the Ocean scripts that the team currently uses. So Ocean is sitting in there. So you can actually see, all the code for it, and you can possibly just take this and then run it. This is today's stuff. And then once we have Ocean merged in, then it's actually going to be far simpler. You're not going to need Whale. You're not going to need, any of that. Just DeFi is actually going to just, sync it, and then you're pretty much good to go. Sync it with a label, and you're pretty much good to go. Everyone can have their own Ocean. So once we do that, then I think that's actually a great point where our goal is to bring that into this infra repo itself. So if you're providing a set of, okay, this is a Ocean group that's going to be running Ocean, and then through that, if you're able to just provide some IPs, we can just add those IPs here, and it basically just moves around, and different people, we can actually truly have a much more decentralized infrastructure for this as well. Right, so that would actually be great. I'm looking forward to getting Ocean in there, and then community can actually do that. On that note, another thing that I actually missed regarding the foundation is another part of this is beyond DeFiChain infra. Once the community governance aspect is set, so the goal is we also create another governance repository, and the governance repository is then going to have any token add, token removal, anything that we are setting on a periodic basis, like the DEX fees, all of that. We can then use the governance repo where everybody collaborates on what needs to be set, how it needs to be set. Everybody sees what it is. And if, let's say, there are 10 people from the community who are added into that special interest group who manage that governance, then basically, you can have multi-sig, or you can have single signature, depends on how the special interest groups wants to play it. And they can actually, make sure that let's say you want to add a new oracle, or let's say you want to add change DEX fees. So they can actually you add it into the governance repo and then vet it, and then the team, everybody signs it and actually sends it out. This is the large level goal, just setting the initial stage for it. So, of course, it'd be great if the community can discuss it and then figure out how we actually want to get it into implementation. The core foundational pieces, currently, we need to do a little bit more on tech, so which is basically what this PR is about, and most of the chunk about this PR is going to be. Hopefully that helps with question number 1. Question number 2, token split support and Light Wallet for tokens from the EVM side. Old token splits do not show up on the EVM side. So in terms of Light Wallet, I think that's an interesting question. I'll have to check in with the Light Wallet team on what is the what amount of effort it's going to take. But long story short, Light Wallet as well is something that we would ideally like to open source. But let me discuss more of that with the team and then come back. The Light Wallet, the goal of Light Wallet so far has always been dealing with DVM. EVM has just been a nice to have, but if it's something that's really important, then I think I'll come back on that. I'll have to talk to the team and figure out how that works.
Awesome. So I created a Google form and we got some questions there submitted as well. There's some spam among it, so I'm going to skip the spam. I'm going to start with the first question, also basically going to answer it myself, and then for the second question, I'm going to pass it over to you. So there is one person that asked, by the way, everything was anonymous, so I'm going to stick to the anon format. So one user asks, what happens in the end after Bake support cuts the support for DeFiChain or for Birthday Research? Who will pay the core developers? So here, just keep in mind, last January we actually had a CFIP that was submitted from the DeFiChain Labs side, and they ask 1 out of 10 million DFIs and for a complete independent continuation of DeFiChain Labs in this format. And the rest, so 1 DFI comes from the community fund, and the rest came from donations, mainly from Bake. And this was for whole of 2024, and for a later part of the year. So the long-term vision of this is a combination out of donations and from the blockchain itself, meaning community fund and donations mainly that could contribute to a fully independent operation there. I hope that answers the question. And then we have one more question regarding the atomic swap. Is there atomic swap still being pursued? If yes, what is the current state? I don't know, Prasanna, if you want to take that.
Yeah, sure. Let me add on to 1 as well. But 2 is, at the moment, we've actually not had sufficient amount of time to actually test through that. I think that's really the blocker. And then beyond that, because one of the first few things that we are highly prioritizing is in relation to 1 as well, which is getting all the pieces for actually decentralization in place. Then, atomic swap is just a switch at the end of the day. So once there's enough confidence, then you can end up enabling it. But also the reason why we are not prioritizing, I think it also helps to add on that. We've been looking through analyzing the chain on how many people are actually using it. I think we have to be more data driven when we actually make these decisions. And there's not a lot of people who have been using atomic swap, right? So which is where, in terms of impact, now we enable something and then we are now ending up with a lot more things to verify, right? So we don't want to end up taking on that when the impact, when the looking at the data is not as much, right? So again, there are a couple of you can also figure out how you can look at these data and how many people, how many addresses are using this. It's all on chain. You can look it up. But we're also coming up with couple of open source repo where all of these smaller projects are there. So it's easy for you as a developer to just run them and then pick out these data as well, right? So that's point 2. Now going back to point 1 a little bit more. So there's also some more discussions. There's been a couple of there's a lot of very involved discussions on Discord, but one thing that I will kind of point out is relating to all of this. So there's been some questions on one way where things can be made more and more independent, right? So what that would look like is, just give me 1 moment. Let me share. Okay, so I'll just cover some small parts of it, right? So there are ways where once we enable Restructure Foundation, once we enable community governance, then basically a lot of the parts can operate in 2 different ways. One is, still the large chunk happens on the native side, but that means native side is incredible amount of barrier entry for people to come in, contribute, and then actually move things forward. So then the other approach is to actually move more of the things to EVM layer. What this means is not fully moving everything to EVM and not EVM in a manner where they are updatable contracts, but within a certain conventional set. And then use the power of DVM as well, where because using DVM, you can use the special interest groups as a way to sign and then enable change contracts, right? So if you end up combining both of these, then we get an effect where people can actually develop on EVM and then eventually just graduate it. Again, is this the best thing to do? Is it not? There are discussions in Discord. I think there are different people who feel different about it. So, but I've covered some of it, so I won't touch on it more. I think it's better for the Discord community to kind of, mull on some of these and then think about what is the best way to approach there. But one of the things that I think is important to point out is native code today, it's always been an open community, but the barrier to entry has always been high because one is it's a complex C++ toolchain, maintenance of it, the build system of it, everybody needs to get on board. So it'd be very good for us to keep that surface area small and effective to keep the chain running, whereas everything else can go on a much faster iteration pace, right? So native code also involves, with the moment anybody commits any part of the code, then we have to think about how does this interact with the past code? Not just that, we also have to think about how does it interact with future code, where if there's some dependencies updated, then it's going to break linkage, or then it eventually everything comes under one small core team to maintain it, even whether or not we have the context for that code. What that would mean is, in practice, it's going to translate to bugs that'll end up happening when you revamp this code in many different ways. This is not just something that happens in DeFiChain. A lot of the large projects, this is usually what happens, where people might actually end up changing different parts of the code, but then affecting systems that they don't really intend to. These are all very common things. So this is from a native code. These are all high-level barriers that's there. And the moment you put in any code into native, you also have to think about, hey, is this going to affect Ocean? Is it going to affect the infrastructure? Is it going to affect the indexing performance? Would it actually bring the node to a stop? A small bug in any aspect could potentially, actually stall the node or prevent the network itself. All of these are problems that you don't have in EVM, right? That's not to say EVM is all, green and rosy land, but if you combine both of them, which is use the governance to set, let's say, oracles. If in theory, oracles are being built, the new version 2.0 is built on EVM land, then what you can actually do is, on the core level, we enable more things where we enable this governance model where you can set which is the formal oracle that the special interest group want to set, which is a contract that you want to set for this oracle. Given those contracts are not immutable contracts that cannot be updated, then you can basically, then people can start building Oracle 2.0 today, right? You don't need to wait for the core team. You don't need to, ask us, hey, is this a good way to build it? Because you can actually just go build it and then come back. And when it comes to DFIPs, we're not discussing arbitrary things, but rather we're actually discussing, okay, is this implementation the best way for us to fit it in? Or what are the changes that we need in this implementation? And in theory, you can even see things live. And this is how most of the chains operate as well. So one of our goals is to enable parts of this, whether or not the community wants to go in this direction. I'll leave it up to people who are working on the Oracle side on how they want to enable it. But I think it's very important to think about it from this aspect. There are like more things that you can do as well. I've explained some of the core aspects of it there. The large way to kind of think about is the chain is kind of like a browser, right? And you don't, when you're building extensions for the browser or when you're building web apps for the browser, you don't want to be compiling the whole web browser. Then nobody's going to build anything, right? So today it's kind of that land. So we want to keep that core. There are things that needs to go in there as well, which is very important, right? So which is kind of the token-based system, the DEX. These are all things that needs to be in that layer. But things beyond that, if we enable this way, then community can go build all of these things in independent teams, and they can maintain things in independent teams. So that's one of the things that I'm personally a proponent of. I left some of my thoughts there, and then let's see how the things go in discussions. And maybe we can pick this up again in some of the next discussion on whoever's wants to run the Oracle SIG, or in the next team call, we can probably discuss that. I'm happy to do that. Yeah, so sorry, it was a long one, but hopefully this helps set some kind of context.
Awesome. I don't see any more questions here on Google, and also we addressed all questions in a Google form. So thank you for the elaborate answer, Prasanna, and thanks everybody, of course, for joining in. This session is going to be, it is recorded right now. We're going to work out a blog piece, and there is also going to be a recording available for everybody that maybe missed the beginning. And we are going to be back with this format somewhere mid-September. The exact date is going to be announced 7 days ahead of time. Prasanna, for final words.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add on one more thing. I think there was very valid feedback on Discord, where it's difficult for people to come up for these meetings because it's not structured in a certain way. So I thought perhaps I think it's good to actually fix that. That's very valuable feedback. So maybe we can take a poll on when it's actually good. Maybe first Monday or first Tuesday. Fabio, what do you think about it? Maybe we can just do a quick poll and then figure out, okay, what is the one that works for most people, and then let's fix it there.
Yeah, sure. We can do probably in 2 weeks. So let's say end of August. We can make a poll with a few dates, a few time slots, and just ask the community what works best. Awesome.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank
Aligned.
you.
Good. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and see you, I guess, in 30 days or so.
Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate it. Thanks, Fabio. Thanks, Prasanna. Bye.
Freie TK-Weg in Mörbisch, Saarloup.